So, just a little over 10 years ago, my family and I moved from Alexandria, Virginia, right outside Washington, D.C., where I had built my business, where most of my clientele was, where I made usual trips on the D.C. Metro into town for meetings and so on. We sold the house, the cars, absolutely everything, brought our lives down to about 7 suitcases and a dog. Not the one behind me, but another one. And so this was about 10 years ago, and we moved to Costa Rica. Now, it wasn't completely a crazy idea. We had been here before. I was actually born here, but grew up in the States. So we have connections. I was able to reinstate citizenship. Family was able to get citizenship and so on. So this was the easy path for us to become expatriates or digital nomads in terms of my business. Now, granted, this was 2014. This is before, well, what I like to say is it's before it was cool to be a digital nomad. I like to think I pioneered it. There are plenty of us down here, though. Don't get me wrong. So anyway, today I wanted to talk about running a US based business while living in another country. Now, I joke about Costa Rica. It's kind of like international travel 101. It's not too exotic. It's not very far from the US. In terms of time zones, we do Central Time, so I'm basically in the middle of the coast, give or take an hour depending on the year because we don't do daylight savings. So it's an easy transition. I know there's people on YouTube who have much more exciting stories, but I wanted to talk about running a US-based business from abroad. And you might think it's complicated, but you know what? It's really not. Taxes, baking, so on. In all honesty, it's a lot easier than you would think. So like I said, we did this move 10 years ago, and the idea was that internet made location irrelevant. And I don't know if that was entirely true back in 2014. I did have to have discussions with clients. They were concerned about connectivity. They were concerned about how they were going to get a hold of me, and so on. But in the end, I think it's about today. And I guess all times, I guess it's about reliability and not geography. However, I will say it's one more thing you got to prove to your clients. So, how do I manage finances, logistics, and client expectations while living in Costa Rica and keeping a US-based business? Let's break it down. I guess the first real question, an obvious one, is it even all that much different than running a business in the US? And spoiler, not really. All my clients are US based. All my contracts are US contracts, and all my banking is US banking. I have not complicated things by trying to get clients in Costa Rica. I have not complicated things by trying to open up business bank accounts and so on, or exposing myself to different tax laws and so on. So I'm still operating as an LLC out of Virginia. I maintain a mailing address and a PO box and all that kind of stuff. I'm going to argue that time zone it's an advantage. Costa Rica is Central Standard Time, so we don't do daylight savings. So at any given time, I'm 1 to 2 hours off of the East Coast, which means I'm done earlier in the day, which is nice. I start earlier, which is fine. I'm a morning person. So honestly, it makes life easy. And with West Coast clients, it's the same deal. So, and as though I don't have as many of those, I can expand that way without any concern of time zones and so on. Communication is still the same. Now, back in 2014 when I moved here, Zoom really wasn't a thing. So I had Vonage VoIP. We didn't do a lot of video calls. I did travel back to the US to meet with my larger clients face to face about once a quarter in the first couple years. Then that dwindled to about a half a year, and then maybe once a year. And then the pandemic hit, and honestly, after that, I don't have to go back at all. Thank you, Zoom, for that, because I can do everything online. And I don't need to travel. So I'm saving that money. I'm saving that time. Though I still like to go back to a few cities in the US. So anyway, at the end of the day, it's email and Zoom calls and so on. And it works just as well here as it does anywhere else. In fact, most clients don't even know I'm abroad. Unless it comes up, I don't tell them. It's not a secret. I'm not trying to fool anyone. But if it doesn't come up, I simply don't mention it. Let's talk about the logistics of it all. Everything money-wise for the business, everything is US-based banking. I keep all my finances in the US, and I only pull personal money into a checking account that's available here, so that I can get cash and pay bills and so on here locally. You know, for credit cards and everything else, I use American Express for just about everything. I have several different cards with them, and I use them for different reasons. But it's my go-to for expenses. And since most of my purchases are digital, you know, cloud services and software, it makes perfect sense. It makes no difference. So I'm able to manage all that kind of stuff. Paying contractors and so on, that just runs through the US bank system. So that's not a problem at all. So that's just like I'm there in the US. And taxes, like I said, I haven't muddied anything up by trying to do work here. All my business is in the United States. In fact, I fall under the foreign exclusion earned tax credit. And I won't get into that, but basically, I get to write off a significant portion of my income because I don't live in the United States. So anyway, that's an advantage. Okay, so that sounded all easy, but you know what? It's not all rainbows and unicorns. I'm sure you can imagine. There are definitely some challenges from running this little business from Costa Rica. The biggest one, I think, is tech issues. You know what? There is not an official Apple store here, and I'm an Apple guy. There's not even the big box retailers unless you head up into San Jose. But you know what? I'm a 5-hour drive, and I'm talking Central American highways kind of drive up there. So, and even once you got up there, you know, it's getting better over time, but the equipment might be a few years old and so on. So buying modern equipment, stuff that I like as a web developer, is a challenge here. So replacing gear, if my laptop were to break, God forbid I drop it, whatever, it's a hassle. It's a big hassle. So we've got to ship something down. And if that's the case, well, it's going to take at least a week, maybe a couple weeks to get here. And then they're going to slap on those import taxes. Those things can double the price of your gear. So, you know, a $2,000 laptop is now a $3,000, $4,000 laptop. So it doesn't make any sense for me to do that. It's kind of cheaper for me to get on an airplane, fly up to, say, Miami, buy my gear, and head back down. Now, I half joke about that because I would consider it. So now you got to plan backups and so on. And for a long time, I used just a MacBook Pro. But now I have a laptop and a desktop so that I have backups. I think it's very important. I've learned some lessons along the way. And then also, guess what? Family and friends who come visit, we make them mules. They are typically loaded up with stuff to bring down to us that we can't easily get down here. So the reality is that Costa Rica in particular is simpler than you would think. So if you're thinking about moving abroad and running a business, I guess my only real advice is don't overcomplicate it. Keep your finances in the US, set up redundancy for your work and work environment. And as long as you stay responsive to your clients and the people you rely on for your income, it should go fine. I'm going to do another video about internet connectivity and some of the challenges that I've had with that. But for the most part, I think that's the message. So for me, Costa Rica is home, but my business, it still lives in the United States.